How did that one kid at your school die? He was my brother. He was given someone else's prescription morphine. He wasn't told the dangers or how many was safe to take. He took 4. We found him on Thanksgiving morning. He was in a coma until he died on December 6, 1996. It destroyed my family. Mom committed suicide in '98. Dad drank and smoked himself to death in 2019. My life completely derailed for a while, but I'm doing okay now. I'm in a town where everyone knows everyone. I was my last year in primary school. 10 11th-year-olds and the youngest years were 5-year-olds. One stood out, Maddie. Lil bro was a menace and hyperactive, so growing up I always recognized him around town. Fast forward to when I was 18-19, I'm coming home from work. To get to my place you have to drive past a field his old man owns with some livestock, and I see some smoke coming from the bottom. Told my folks to keep going home. It's likely Maddie and friends, now 11/12, with a campfire. I'll keep an eye on them for a while. I get down there and sure enough, small group of lads just chilling with a controlled fire. I make it a little more secure and chill out with them keeping an eye. Maddie left the circle and was messing about making a second fire. Kept my eye on him but didn't think too much of it. Took my eyes off him for maybe 30 seconds. Next thing I hear is watch this, as his face is 6 inches from a fire, which has just placed a pressurized can in marked extremely flammable. Can't remember what it was. Swear to God I've never moved so fast and tackled him straight down to the ground. Second later, it was like a small bang and a sound that was like, well, what I assume firing a flamethrower sounds like. Caught the blast all on my left side. Being a few feet away from it was still enough to make that side of my face bright red for days. Had he stayed that close to it face forwards, I imagine this is how he would have ended up. Kid who used to bully me a bit. Wasn't overall a real bad kid, but the week before head grabbed my collarbone and dragged me around the quad by it like it was a handle. It was still sore when he ran out in front of a car on a crossing and spent a week or so in a coma before dying. We were only about 7 or 8. But when they went around the class and tried to get us all to say our favorite memory of him, I couldn't come up with anything. I just said he used to bully me, but I didn't want him to die. Everyone looked at me like I was a fucking monster, and the teacher got flustered and moved on. Back in high school, in the 90s, there was a rampant wave of kidnappings of Filipino Chinese citizens in the capital. My classmates literally stopped coming to school. Either their families went into hiding because of fear, migrating to the US or Canada, or worse, got kidnapped themselves. We didn't really know what was happening and the schools were not saying anything. Dismissals were done in almost military fashion and there were police presence everywhere. Despite all of these efforts, some of the students who disappear, we would eventually discover, were still kidnapped. Even with their families paying ransom, they were murdered and their bodies were found in the field in a province outside the capital. Our entire school was distraught. Even if we didn't know them personally, something as tragic and gruesome as that rattles you. My friend at primary school was murdered by his parents before both of them killed themselves in a pact. I was first at the scene with the adult who was on the school run and came to pick him up. It was a small, very strict old-fashioned school, and I was told I could not talk to anyone about it because it was too scary for children to know that parents could kill their child. No counseling back then. I had difficulties at home and at school, and it brought suicide to my understandings of options in life, and has been a very present issue at times as an adult. She had an asthma attack on a school-sponsored ice skate outing, and the ambulance couldn't get her to the county hospital on time. She was already blue with bright red, panicking eyes when they took her away. The kicker was that we were told to leave everything at school so if we fell on the ice, the things in our pockets wouldn't cause us injury. She left her inhaler behind. I'm a teacher and one of my students started having an asthma attack at a school assembly. We didn't have an inhaler in the office for him, so I let him use someone else's. I, understandably, got in a lot of trouble. But albuterol is a pretty benign drug otherwise, and I was willing to take him and his sister's word. He wasn't allergic to prevent a possibly catastrophic attack. She was in a different grade, but also at the assembly. I can still hear and see the panic in both of them 10 or so years later. I was willing to get yelled at for breaking protocol if it meant he could breathe. Luckily, I kept my job and, now as a parent of a child with asthma, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I studied with a kid that was born HIV with developed AIDS due to his parents being drug users. During the last 3 years of high school, he did 3 surgeries and removed almost 40% of his lungs. As you can imagine, a lot of people bullied him. Mind me, he wasn't easy to deal with too. He grew in a foster home and was very social inept. But me and my group of friends always tried to let him fit in as much as we could. By 2009 we all graduated and we didn't hear from him anymore aside from casual gossips and sightings in the streets until 2017 arrived. A friend of mine was volunteering in Ango and worked with homeless people and found him in one of the lines for food. By that time, he was living in the streets for a long time and not much could be done, as a lot of us still had contact with each other. In one day, we gathered donations and gave him everything he would need to survive for a long time. He was very thankful and told more about his life, how the foster care let him go after he was 18, etc. Not even 2 days later, another volunteer called my friend to say that this guy got into a fight in the shelter and was expelled. As he was leaving the building, he fell and hit his head in the curb, dying instantly. Our school guidance counselor was married to a very wealthy guy. They had a son, Brett, who was spoiled, good-looking and popular. Maybe a little entitled and douchy, but far less than you would expect. Overall a decent dude. Brett started dating this girl, who was poor. Her family shared a house with 3 other families so they could send their kids to this school district. Brett's mom did not approve at all. She wasn't shy about saying so either. She loathed this girl. And the longer Brett kept seeing her, the angrier she got. Then Brett and the girl decided to attend the same university. The mom was fucking pissed. Halfway through senior year, before any of it could really come to a head, Brett died in a car accident. Never saw the mom again. Never saw the girl again. They quit and switched schools respectively. It was such an unexpectedly tragic end to this silly soap opera we had all been following. Anytime I think about Brett, I think about how much his mom must regret that she spent the last few months of his life bitterly fighting him over something as stupid as loving a girl whose parents were in the wrong tax bracket. We had a kid like this too, except he was in my 8th grade gym class, and we didn't know he had a heart condition and he just fucking fell over. My mom made me take a CPR class before I could babysit my siblings, and I really gave it my best little 8th grade shot for a solid 20 minutes before the EMS showed up. We had a substitute that day, and I was the only one who knew how to do it. I'm still sorry to his parents. Sorry Mr. and Mrs. K. I really try. Edda. Thanks everyone for the well wishes. It was almost 30 years ago now. I'm glad to be talking about my friend here even if we did end our friendship on such a tragic note. He was a great kid that loved to BBQ and play basketball, and he taught my little brother how to ride a bike. I just think everyone should know that. Our school used to have early morning and evening swimming practice for the school swimming team members. When I say early morning, I'm talking 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Afraid of punishments, the girls would hurry out their dorms to the pool quick. One day, one girl, we still aren't sure if she was sleepy or suicidal, she jumped from the topmost diving board straight into an empty pool. The water had been drained night prior. Everyone was left wondering if she thought there was water or if she just jumped. The kid was my brother. He fell face first into some 6 inches of rebar. It pushed past his left eye, penetrated his brain, and came to a stop on the back of his skull on the right. His heart had stopped when Mum found him, pulled him off, called an ambulance. Ambulance didn't believe what happened. It was 1990 because there was no visible trauma. After the eye went back into place, they managed to get his heart going again. His heart stopped another 3 times in the hospital. Had to fly an army surgeon over from Northern Ireland, who specialized in gunshots to the head, to do the brain surgery. My brother lived and is gonna be 40 next year. Not bad for someone who died 4 times. To add injury to further injury, for years after his first accident 199 for 8 years old, he stole my mum's cigarette lighter early in the morning to try a lighter trick he'd seen someone do. Got it severely wrong, and ended up with full thickness burns on 52% of his body. Another edit. Another reply to a user's reply. I almost forgot, when he was 12, his seatbelt failed during a crash, and he went through the windscreen, totally unscathed. 1 accident every 4 years. Luckily, his added 16th year went by without a hitch. There was a drunk driver that hit a vehicle that had 5 of my football teammates in high school in it. 4 of them passed away right away, and the 5th barely survived and was in the hospital for months. That rocked our community to the core. Still think about them, and to this day I'd rather fight someone for their keys. Trying to drive home drunk than then drive home. Brain cancer. I don't even know how to describe this girl. Bear in mind this was the 80s. She was as girly as they come, and could still hang with the Judes. She was everyone's friend, and one day she disappeared. We later found out she had brain cancer, but back then we never thought of the word terminal. Then suddenly after a year she came back in a terrible wig. We all knew it was a bad wig, but it made her feel more human. We were just happy to have her back. Easily 6 months after she came back to school, she was gone. I was a pallbearer at her funeral. Worst day of my life. Leukemia. Weeks from being 12. I had known him for 3 years. I was always sitting next to him because I never got sick and was adamant about keeping my hands and stuff clean, so our teacher sat me next to him. I was 11 when they sent all of us home with a sealed note for our parents. Somehow, I just knew what it said, so I just handed it to my mother and went off to watch TV. I still think about him. I think 11-year-old me refused to acknowledge he was gone. I was the only one in our year that didn't go to his funeral. I'll forever regret that. 1st grade. Kid from my class passed away in a house fire. I remember asking my teacher where he was after he hadn't been in class for a week. She took me out in the hall and told me he'd gone to heaven. When I told my mom about it after school, she asked for the boy's name. I told her. And turns out she had read how he died in the newspaper. I lost it after that, boo-hooed for hours. I wasn't super close to the kid, but we played together at recess occasionally. And I considered everyone in my classroom as my friend. Took me a while to get over it. I kept thinking over and over how horrible of a death that must have been. There were 2 identical twins in my high school. Everyone knew them because they were always together and both heterochromia, just inversed. And that's how we could tell which one was which. One day I came to school to be told that one of them just suddenly died while playing football in front of the other. The second didn't come to school for a while. I can only imagine how it must feel to see your brother drop dead in front of you. My best friend was walking to another one of our close friends' house when he was hit by a distracted driver, who then proceeded to keep driving for another 10 miles before she was caught. I didn't find out until I was at school the next day, waiting for him to get off the bus. He was supposed to be graduating high school 2 years early and only had 3 more weeks until that goal. I still miss him every day. A cheerleader killed by a friend. The new police force didn't know what they were doing. They brought in the FBI. It was the early 1980s. They cops, media, students and teachers thought it was an outcast. Or in my case, a punk rocker. 2 of us went through hell, being accused and harassed for months. Her family, of course, very upset. It turned out to be someone in her group that did it. Both myself and the other accused girl ended up leaving the school for good. 1 kid died from suicide from bullying that the school knew about but did nothing. Everyone in the school was begging the head teacher to exclude the bully. The police were on site twice a week. 2. The bully's parents always threatened legal action and physical violence if the school did do anything. Victim eventually hung himself, but he did it at a building site the bully's dad was working on, with a note detailing everything that had happened. Bully was finally excluded and arrested. Bully's family house was attacked, family car smashed up, dad beaten the shit out of any time anyone saw him in town. Bully and his family had to leave the county despite trying to stay because, rather than own up and apologize for being the scum they were, doubled down on it and threatened to burn down the school, beat up teachers, and the parents of other kids. Suicide. He was a Muslim kid at a Christian school. Parents enrolled him because they wanted a religious environment, but there weren't any Muslim schools. The school and police did a full investigation to see if there was any bullying or evidence of hate crimes against him, but didn't find anything. Seems the kid was just unhappy. The dean held an assembly to talk about what happened and to let everyone know about available therapy counselors if anyone needed it. He apologized for failing to create an emotionally safe enough campus and for allowing a child to be so unhappy under his watch. He had to stop halfway through his speech because he was crying too much, and the assistant dean had to finish the assembly. All classes were canceled for the rest of the week and the school brought in therapy dogs to sit in the commons for people to pet.